And I believe we are on air now. So that's a great news. So hi there, everybody. I think you've noticed I've done something like that before with Lee Barlow, and it seems to be popular. So I decided to come back with yet another Google Hangout, Spiritual Alchemy Show special, or however you want to call it. And today I have somebody I already have on some of my shows before, but this is like the first time you can actually see him if you are watching this on the YouTube. If you are listening to this on the Spiritual Alchemy Show, then obviously you can't. But you can still find it on YouTube if you wish. So today I'm here yet again with Matthew. Hi there.
How's it going?
um, I actually realized one thing. We've been talking, and you actually said, "Oh, I never actually officially become public with my name." So I think it might be a good opportunity to say, "Hey, Matthew, known as Rivinil Karim, kind of been feared on many different spiritual forums past few years." So yes, indeed, this is him, now becoming public and functioning under his public name. So today we decided to talk about a topic that is fairly interesting, and not many people are actually talking about it for some reason. The reason why I thought this topic is very interesting, except for the fact that not many people are actually talking about it, is the fact that I believe myself that video games and magic are actually very similar. They have loads of the same topics, but it seems like the video games are not being taken seriously by the magic community, and magic community is not being taken seriously by the video game community. So it is this kind of like, everybody mocks everybody and nobody's taking nobody seriously, which in that case I believe might be a shame because, as I said, loads of things in common. And I must admit that my video might be freezing a little bit, but I hope it's fine. And but I do believe those two things got loads of things in common. And actually, it was Matthew who pointed out to me. So, how you actually started with like video games and magic? How this whole idea came to your head? Like this actually has something in common.
Right. So, I talked about it on your other show that we did a little bit, kind of elaborated, touched on it somewhat. Um, and, basically grew up in the 90s. I mean, I was born in the late 80s, but grew up in the 90s. And that was the golden age for a lot of things. It was a golden age for entertainment for sure in a lot of ways.
Hey, that's true.
I mean, like if you go back, I mean, definitely like you'll have times where entertainment was really awesome, little pockets here and there. But I would say consistently through the 90s, entertainment was just such a huge deal and just such a big part of definitely my culture in America. And, so one of the things that I did a lot was play video games when I was a kid because it was this emerging market. It was just on the come up the whole time. And it was just like, when I was really little, I was playing with action figures all day. But so I kind of did that, I was doing that while playing video games through my childhood. And basically, like, I'll get into this more later, like the importance, like why I feel that it's important. But basically, the way I got into it was like when I was really little, and I got like a Sega Genesis when I was like 4, and I was just playing Sonic all day. And it's funny because I also kind of got my little sister into that too, like at the same age, but she had better games
Sonic
by
and
that
his new
point.
adventures.
Yeah, new adventures, exactly. Yeah, no hands. And so anyway, it's just like I don't know. Sonic was definitely there. It was a big deal to me. You know, and yeah, by the time my sister got into it, it was just like she had way better video games than when I was a kid, and you know, I was playing those too, and so it really influenced me as a child, because
I like this. Like, I actually remember Sonic. Wasn't he able like run very fast? He had some superpowers, wasn't it? It was just like, well, he was a hedgehog, but obviously he was like, I like this idea. He was something more than a regular person, like or regular hedgehog. Like you get this. He was like running very fast, wasn't it? It was I can't remember what he was actually able to do.
It's like, you know, and this was in the 90s too, and like, you know, crack was a really big deal too, and people were just doing a lot of drugs during that time too, and so it's kind of like, you know, gotta go fast, you know, and stuff like that. But that's totally unrelated. I'm just kind of poking fun at that, but I mean,
wow. Is it unrelated? Like loads
it
of
might not be.
Loads of magical cultures, shamanism and stuff like that, they're all using drugs as to alternate their consciousness. Right. So I think you might be kind of like swirling around the same topics.
Absolutely right. Yeah. You know, I got into it when I was young. And it's funny too, because in my psychology class that I was taking last semester, video games got brought up, and you know, one of my favorites was Mortal Kombat. I'd say I actually probably played that more than Sonic, maybe. And there's this thing called ESRB ratings in games, which is, you know, the maturity level, and that actually started with Mortal Kombat, and it was because one of the fatalities. Fatality is like a finishing move. It was so brutal that they're like, no, like we can't market this to children, and so they basically changed the ratings with that game. That's where they started doing ratings for video games. You know, but and I know the one specifically, but I'm not even gonna say it. But basically with Sonic, it was just, you know, I wasn't even that good at it. It was just I played it all the time and really thought it was fun. And he's like this iconic character. Like people say it too, like that the games aren't necessarily even that great. It's just that he's like such a great character design that he's just stuck around forever. And a lot of stuff from that period has. A lot of that stuff is like able to celebrate its 20th anniversaries, you know, and in popularity now, you know, where people are still way into it. And it's like 20th anniversary, 25th anniversary of like all these different games from that era that are still super popular now. And it's kind of interesting because we've talked about cartoons, which was another huge thing for me when I was a kid, but those are terrible now too. So it's just like, it's just interesting to see that time era and what came out and how it's still like considered really popular, and people want to bring those shows and those things back.
Well, I've noticed like it's definitely, I completely agree with you with that cartoons lately. I haven't seen any good ones. Like most of them are horrendous. Like that truly are. I must be terrible to be a kid at this point. But I know they're trying to resurrect like the old shows. I've noticed that too. But actually, if I actually kind of think about it, the truth is that loads of the magicians that are in actual games, like RPGs mostly, the tools they are using, even the spells they are using, it's the same thing I can actually find in actual magical traditions. I know you've been showing me the Second Life and the which I never played, but you know, I have Matthew got like this cool magician character in Second Life, and he could do like weather spells, right? But weather spells are something that actually have a root in actual magical traditions, and also the character can cast a shadow and cast a circle. But again, like those things actually have a background in magical tradition. So it's not like the game came with it. Like they came up with it like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and the game somehow just give it quite entertaining and colorful face. So
Absolutely.
that was super interesting. It was super interesting for me to see. I never realized that. I never made this link before. You being the person who actually showed me that.
Well, it's absolutely true that and they talk about that too with science and spirituality, that oh, science is just catching up. I think that what's happening now is with games and entertainment and things like that is like, if you look at games, I mean, they're just a lot of it, they're just taking from older concepts and just making it more modern and making it kind of like more cool for kids or whatever, more modern or whatever. And but a lot of the concepts aren't too far off from magical practice like you're talking about. And I feel like the further along that I get in my work, the more that all of that stuff just seems less like fantasy and more like actual, like, okay, that's on the astral plane. Like, what is your limitation? What's the limitation in the mental and astral plane? I mean, at the physical plane, I mean, it's kind of limited. You can't like go fly right now, or you can't, there's certain things you can't immediately do that those things kind of put into reality and say, yeah, you can throw fireballs. Yeah, you can do this and that. But on the astral level, all that stuff is perfectly cool and you can do all that. And so, it kind of ties into what we were talking about with LARPing and things like that, where I'm totally cool if people want to do LARPing. Like, I have nothing against it. I've never done it, just like you've never done Second Life. I've never done LARPing, but I've had friends who have done it, and I think that's totally cool for them, like, if they enjoy doing it. But I know that gets a really bad rep. And
That's it. I have no experience with it whatsoever.
I think it has to do with the name, honestly. I think it's like people they get this kind of handle on it, like LARPing. It sounds dumb, but it's
It sounds like a bunch of geeks somewhere in the basement trying to do some drugs and not working. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for the most part, that's probably what it is. Probably worse than that. You probably glamorized it into being something.
Like, if you put it like that, it sounds like a bunch of. It sounds a bit like a bunch of geeks. Like, okay, let's put aside this Dungeon and Dragon notebooks and let's do some fun. Let's do some drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried it, so I can't knock it, like I've said. But where I see magic and video games tie in is, I think that, because I brought it up, I think that whole concept of LARPing is kind of cool. Like, you see a lot of like role-playing games and stuff that people do, where you're basically like creating your own character. They have abilities, and you can do with other people. You can, have adventures and things like that. I think like.
Let me just step in for the listeners or watchers. Cosplay does not necessarily mean only sex. That means also just going on a comic con and looking cool, and trying to socialize with the people which you have very hard time to socialize outside of your costume. So cosplay is not just that. So yeah, just wipe your grinds, you perverts. We are continuing.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing too. Okay, let's look at it from that perspective of cosplay and LARPing. What's really the difference? I mean, in a lot of ways, like, yeah, okay, like, they're in costume or whatever, while LARPing, it seems like it's more like it's a real thing, but it kind of crosses over. And
Just in case somebody doesn't know what LARPing is, can you just like quickly explain it to people?
Oh yeah. LARPing is live action role playing, and they joke about, I'm sure I'm gonna catch hell for this, but I don't really care. They talk about like certain magical orders like the Golden Dawn being just like LARPing, and in a lot of ways it actually
hit
sugarcoat it
sinking.
or walk around it. It just is in a lot of ways, but you know, but
Sinking.
but you know, then there's traditions and stuff where it's, I would say, more legitimate, and that gets stolen from.
Well, if I can poke into somebody, I would poke into Rosicrucians and imagining pink clouds, but I haven't said anything.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as much as we've joked about the Rosicrucians in the past,
And the
I would
future.
honestly, I respect them more than a lot of orders, but especially that one I just mentioned. But and it's not necessarily the orders; it's the people in the orders that bother me. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to Rome. I promised that.
So it's just the personalities really is what it is. It's the, yeah. But anyway, that's of no consequence to this show. Basically, the tie-in with magical concepts in video games. It's like when I was a kid, I was just way into it. It was just like play with action figures, eat a ton of junk food, watch TV all day, play video games, somewhere in there repeat that cycle, and just like, so I was just in this completely creative and imaginative world. And in magic and things like that, you have things like evocation and working with spirits and stuff. And nowadays people, they're more into the psychological mindset of it's in your mind. And I mean, again, a lot of Golden Dawn stuff, Diane Fortune, Israel Regardie, they were kind of big about the psychological thing, but that's cool. You see more modern practitioners that actually are more in support of the spirit model, and that spirits are actually real beings. But, whatever path or ideology one may wish to have, the fact is that there's something very valid there, that you can use in your life and in a practical way. And so the way I see it is just like merging it with modern times, moving things forward. And, they didn't, like you've said, they didn't have video games when Agrippa was around,
Yeah, I did say that.
which I think is brilliant. And it's true.
It's like imagining Agrippa behind his PlayStation and just like, yeah. He was definitely the type who would play Grand Theft Auto, I can tell.
He absolutely is. And
he was the type who would just beat person and steal their motorbike.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And he absolutely would be that person. And, I bet he'd probably be pretty dirty, playing like multiplayer against him. He just, no. But anyway, yeah, like I look at it like it's valid to consider video games, comic books, anime, all that stuff is perfectly valid.
Agreed.
In this day and age. To disregard it, in my opinion, is, I don't want to say foolish, but it's just it's not really living in reality. It's like it's just not, as fantasy as unworldly and invented as these concepts seem. They've been around for years and years and years, and it becomes an accepted part of our reality. Why not just accept that rather than like, oh no, this is a tradition, it's in this box here, cannot be altered, and then this is everything outside of the tradition, which is all bullshit. And it's just like, it doesn't work because it's not the tradition. It's like, come on. Like, a lot of the people that are into traditions are into that stuff. Why not just bring them together? Would it give it less credibility because it's just not out of the sacred scriptures of whatever these guys wrote like hundreds of years ago? It just, I don't know. But I think that the merging and bringing together of these things is key, for advancing all this stuff and moving it forward and getting people better at it and getting more people into it. And, ultimately just being less snooty about the whole thing.
I definitely agree with you, which obviously you know that, and most people know about my opinions about that. But basically, I've noticed that there is a well, this is quite old approach to things, just basically a general occasionally problems with dealing with the change. But I've noticed obviously like the traditional magic seems to have quite strong tendencies to okay, so you got a magical system. Okay, is it bound in ladder? Yes, no. Is it written in Latin? Yes, no. Okay, that is not valid.
Right.
And I think there is this idea of kind of romanticizing this whole, oh my God, it's ancient, and oh my God, it's written in this cool language I can't speak. Therefore, it
Right.
must be magic. It seems like basically when you're going into the museum and you have a Greek statues, well, they might be shared. They might even been considered shared when they've been made, but because they're ancient and because they're in museum, now we're looking at it, oh my God, that's such a great statue. And
Yeah.
this basic, I think what is actually the value to the thing is more actually like some sort of romanticized myth about the system itself, about the book, about the author, more than the actual knowledge, which basically at a time when it was created was nothing more than the video games are today. It's the same concept, it's the same noodles, just a different packaging.
And I was thinking about that earlier. Like, I don't know if you were gonna keep talking there, but I
No.
had to kind of chime in with, um, you know, I was thinking about it earlier that video games, exactly what you were saying, like video games are going to become what that stuff was. And then, video games, entertainment, anime, all that stuff, that's just going to become like the today's magic. And then it's going to be looked at later, as like the magic of these days that we had or something. It's going to be looked at from a different perspective though, because it's, I mean, down the line, things are going to change. So people are going to look at it and say, yeah, that's what they had. Social media was everything at that time, but digital stuff was everything at that time, but it's, I mean, they had books back then, and we have electronics now.
Mm.
And it's not to say that that stuff is any less valid today than it was then, but um, we talk about things about using your cell phone or an iPad or your laptop as a scrying mirror. You
Mm.
know, we talk about things like that, and I know like people kind of get into these things like, and I agree with some of this about using electronic candles versus real candles. I kind of agree with using real candles. I think that in certain ways, I think that stuff's all good. But again, that doesn't make crossing over electronic or fantasy concepts any less valid. It's just kind of bringing them together in whatever way you feel is the best.
Mm.
Um, it's like in a lot of games that I've played, you'll have a character, you create the character, and in occultism, they talk a lot, sometimes some people do, about visualize who you want to be, visualize the person you want to be.
Mm.
So in this game, you've created a character. Then, you level him up, you or her, you do all sorts of stuff. I mean, I'll play with male or female characters, like it doesn't matter. And that's kind of the beauty of games too, is you kind of like, I wonder what it would like be playing as this character. It's kind of a fun thing too. But kind of like this reality switch, and then you can kind of just go from there and do whatever you want. And the mind, it just thinks that everything is reality. So there's no separation between what's happening in the game and, in real life, really, to your mind.
Mm.
So I think that it can be very valuable for training
Mm.
to undergo playing through a game, all the way through, a quest of some kind, and applying what you learned to your personal system or grimoire, you know.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant idea. Like, actually, you're right about this whole idea of having your own character. Basically, that's what you're doing with magic. I know, like, loads of people are saying you should have your own magical name. That's something that was already described, or Hudson is talking about it in his witchcraft book. So,
Right.
but it's the older idea that you have your own magical name that you're invoking at the beginning of the ritual, basically to switch on your magical powers. And that's not the game, that's actual like witchcraft and magic. And also you do invocations, you're invoking the powers, the bornless one, that's like the popular one, or just anybody else, basically again to somehow enhance yourself, to be able to do the magic. So again, it's the same thing. Then
Right.
they're doing in a game, like being somebody else who have those to have those skills.
And the thing too is that the games are super esoteric. I mean, if you get into it, I mean, I've played a lot of games. I haven't necessarily beaten all of them, but you know, I've played a lot of games, and I really respect the creativity and the quality and the vision of the people that put them together. I really do, because it's like I go back to these games now, knowing all that I do, and again, it just seems like the more that I learn with my work, my personal work, like the less far off these concepts seem. I mean, you've got in the video game that I used to love playing a lot, Banjo-Kazooie, so about a bear and a bird, and you go visit this shaman in his hut, and he's like this really powerful shaman, and he transforms you into different things. You go there, and he like shapeshifts you basically, and it and that game is extremely visual. And that's the thing too, is that I found was, with certain games, it seems like the characters are more visual than others. Like they're easier to visualize.
Hmm.
They have more, in lack of better words, astral density to them, where you can kind of just instantly recall them in your mind. Mario, what does Super Mario look like? It's just like this instant, at least for me. I don't know, maybe
Oh
some other,
yeah.
but he's just got this density to him where you just like, it's this plasticity. And, so that's something that I've noticed with certain things. And, this is just my own personal opinion, but from a magical perspective, the more people play a game, the more energy that they're just dumping into that game, the more of their own energy that they're empowering the characters, the title, everything with. They're completely empowering it. And I think that's one of the reasons games are doing so well.
Hmm.
Video games as an industry is doing so well. There's this huge interest in it. Lots of people are playing them. It does well on YouTube. It's become a sport, like we've talked about. People literally will sit around and watch other people play games on YouTube. And so it's like, it's become kind of this big thing, and you see it, and everybody kind of has their own personality in the way they play. Like this game, Super Smash Brothers Melee. And that's a funny concept too, because you see with sports, with the Warriors, they lost recently, but two of the guys that were really popular on that team, they called them the Splash Brothers. And I'm pretty sure they actually got that from that game, Super Smash Brothers. Like they were even calling it like the Super Splash Brothers. So I think they kind of stole that concept from that game. So we have this huge integration of the media, the internet, and games and entertainment and all that stuff. It's this electronic age that we're living in. And it's not to dismiss using things like candles and have incense. It went out, but I have incense in the background. Um, it's not to dismiss using actual fire, in a ritual or whatever. I think that's perfectly valid.
I still have
But
the incense that you send me.
It's actually, it's the same kind of incense. It's Nag Champa, but it's different kind. It's like this was
You've
like,
got like a posh packaging.
they didn't sell this when I got you yours. I would have gotten you this. I would have hooked you up. You know, I would have hooked you up with this. But they didn't have this, and so they just had it, and I was like, I haven't seen that before. And I was like, damn, like look at that. It's like,
Posh Nag Champa.
it's like,
Like
yeah, it's like, this is made by the village women. It's like, oh, it's fancier. It's like going to a good cause. It's like, it's better because it's going to a, no. But anyway, no, I think that like there's so much validity in looking into these topics and seeing all the creative effort that people are putting into it and saying, how is that not magic? And looking at what they're using in the creativity, their magical concepts, and they're just bringing it into our modern times. And it's very subconscious. It's cool the way it works, because I feel like it really plants the seed for a lot of people. You kind of go through this in your childhood, then you revisit it later when you know more, and you go, holy shit, look at what they were talking about back then. Like, look at what I was doing in these games. Look at all this crazy stuff going on in these games that I was doing, you know? And you have like people who are really religious who are like, oh, it's devil worship and stuff like that. And, you know, honestly, for their belief, for their different tradition now, for their structured belief system, it really is like it really is like satanic and all that stuff, because they believe that, you know, spirits and things outside of their tradition is evil. So, you know, you look at things like Pokemon, and those are Japanese spirits. Yeah, those are those are Shinto spirits for the most part, except for the new ones that are like a keychain and an ice cream cone and shit like that. Those aren't actual. Yeah, they're bad. Everything I was saying about 90s cartoons being really
I'm
awesome.
going to call my ice cream cone is going to kick your ass.
Everything I said about 90s cartoons being really awesome and then cartoons sucking now, it holds true with Pokemon too, with the evolution of that game, because it started in the 90s and then it goes into now, and it's just, some of them are good. They've kind of held on to some of them being good, but it's kind of progressively gotten worse with the character designs. Yeah, like when you've got like a garbage Pokemon, it's like, come on, that's not really that creative. No. So, you know,
Ice cream cone. Again, ice cream cone.
ice cream cone, and then I think it actually evolves. I think it evolves into like a double ice cream cone or something creative like that. I don't know. I don't even. There's like over 700 now, and they just keep making more.
So you're starting with like a basic ice cream, and you're evolving all the way to Ben and Jerry's.
It's just so hard to keep track. Yeah, exactly. It's like it evolves to Ben and Jerry's, and then Ben and Jerry's sold the company, so then it becomes this like corporate. This corporate
Then it becomes Ben.
Anyway, so yeah, that's the beauty of you know, being able to talk about this stuff, and to talk about it in a way that is kind of lighthearted and not too serious, and just to kind of laugh and have fun with it, because there's so much opportunity for this to be used in people's systems for all this stuff. If you think about the Goetia and all the people that use that, now we're talking about another tradition, you know, in its box of, you know, can't let other, you know, whatever, just closed off.
Yeah, Goetia, it's a very closed off box.
It's just like, yeah, it's another tradition.
Get off my box.
You know, that's another box. And so it's like, you know, and literally like putting spirits in boxes or triangles or whatever shapes they decide are relevant enough, that has, you know, the romanticized meaning, you know, But you know, you have that, and people have empowered that. They've empowered that by using it. They've empowered it by spiritual work and stuff, just like they've empowered using mantras and things like that in Hinduism. And that's very valid. But if you look at all the kids that have played games, all the energy that they have, think about all the energy kids have and how
Ooh.
creative they are, just running around, and how creative their minds are. You know, I mean, it was Ron Clark who said, a Bardenist, who said that kids' minds are extremely complex. Like they're capable of just, you know, don't underestimate children. Like their minds are just capable of so much in the world of thinking and thoughts. And you know, you see kids that are imagining stuff all day. They're magically training themselves until reality beats it out of them not to do that. And you know, my psychology class that I took, my teacher was saying that you know, his kid talked to themselves or something, and that that's actually a sign of intelligence. That's actually a sign of genius to have imaginary friends as a kid. And I read an article a while back where they were saying that people who have conversations with themselves is also a sign of genius. So I see kind of these connections where people are like, that's fucking crazy. Why are you even defending that? Like, you sound crazy. Like you're trying to defend yourself doing it or something. And it's like, well, they're finding that it's kind of legit. So, you know, I'm kind of on board with that. If they see that, you know, people are actually developing more, then I think that's kind of a cool thing. Because I was definitely like that as a kid, playing with action figures in my own fantasy worlds and stuff, you
I
know.
never had imaginary friends. I was imaginary antisocial. Um,
Well, I mean, that's the same kind of thing in different ways, you
but
know.
like I don't know. I was, but you know what? That's actually very interesting. I was kind of antisocial kid in general, and actually, if I would, I couldn't stand the plushies. Any
Yeah,
plushie in my bag, I'm still very particular about it even to this age. And I actually never had, I was never sleeping in with the plushies because somehow, even then it was a plushie, it was representation of a creature somehow. So for me, it was unacceptable for anything creature representation. For me, it was a living object like a cat, plushie. Parents didn't make much of a difference to me. And in that sense, I couldn't stand neither of them in
right.
my own personal space. So I
Yeah,
think kids naturally feel like the representation, like the plushie or the figure, it can be representation of a real being. And you know,
right.
that's what basically magic does, right? They're using the connection or similarities between physical looking tools like voodoo dolls or shaped candles like man-shaped candles for love
Yeah,
spells to
totally.
actual link to an actual physical object. So it seems to be like something that's naturally somehow within us when we are born. That's how we understand world when we are born, as representations equals the same thing as it's representing. It seems like
Absolutely.
somehow culturally is unlearned over time.
Yeah. You know, I mean, like if I was thinking about that the other day, like the way that I played with action figures and stuffed animals and different toys and stuff. And really it was about giving them life. Really it was that you know, you pick something up and it's suddenly alive, you know, and it's like has this personality that you're, for me it was just create as I go. You know, I might pick up a certain character, you know, let's just say Juggernaut from X-Men. You know, I had toys overflowing out of toy chests and I didn't have enough room to walk around in my room because I would step on them. They were just covering the floor completely. I'd have to like jump to my bed because my cat was hiding under my bed and trying to get me too. But um, you know, I spent so much time, in my opinion, from a magical perspective, certainly with training like Barden, of training my mind, of training my creative faculties. I personally feel that people who are artists, who
Hmm.
draw, who create, that they're training their minds. That when you start to do that stuff, you start to visualize more vividly and sharply. And you know, I wasn't really too into reading. You know, it just didn't hold my attention at the time because I wasn't introduced concepts that were really that cool to me, you know, until I got into martial arts. And that was kind of neat, but I didn't read about it. You know, it was just, that was something that kind of got me in the direction of, oh, this is kind of cool. And, you know, I had like the dragon and the tiger tapestry thing on my wall. And I actually had a tiger patch on my gi that I had when I was starting martial arts. So, you know, it's like, that's kind of like tying it all in, kind of fun, creative type stuff. But, you know, other than that, there's really no limitations to people's minds. And that's why I don't really like the way that people try to shoot other people down who are in traditions, saying, you know, you have to think this way, or, you know, you have to, you know, this scripture said this, so this is the way that we do things, and everything else is just, you know, fluff, you know, or whatever.
I actually, when you were talking about the action figures, I realized like I actually have an action figure myself. Like,
nice.
This is an action figure. When you're playing with action figures, your action figure is your hero, right? And it have superpowers. There you go. And you are using that action figure when you're playing to beat a problem in your life, or beat other action figure, beat some problem, some negativity that you want to get rid of. So you are like playing with that action figure, and the action figure, the representation is representing, it's going to go and get it done.
Right.
For you. Technically speaking, what's the difference? Literally, what's the difference? I think the only difference is that basically people learn to understand action figures as a toy, and this is something else. But if you are able to look a little bit more behind that
concept, it's not a toy. It's not an action figure. It's an idol.
It's the same thing. It's the same. Like, you got action figure of Superman,
right,
and you are playing it to beat somebody who wants to destroy the world. Same thing. Like, you have a Ganesha, and you are giving it some offerings to find you a job. Same stuff.
Where's my Ganesha at? Where's my Ganesha?
Oh, your Ganesha is pretty. I like your Ganesha.
He is pretty. Scribe Ganesha. He's writing.
So yeah, like, technically speaking, action figures and the statues of a god is the same principle. I actually, hold on, I switched to myself. I was thinking about one thing, and I would like to know your opinion about that, because obviously somebody was creating magic, like all of those visualizations, the idea of triangles, the ideas how the demons actually look like. Everything somehow came at some point from a human head, through some sort of downloading, through visions, being told by spirits. Somehow it did came out of the human mind. And it seems to be actually coming from human minds through all over the world in slightly similar-ish forms. And now we have modern times that might be coming from some sort of like collective unconsciousness universe place, because now we have the same thing. You know, we have a person who's trying to do a video game, who's thinking about magic, not to do in his real world, physical world, but something that he can create in the video game. So how is it possible that person will also be tapping into the same space, into the same informational balloon, where the people like 2,000 years ago, Agrippa, been tapping into to summon the demons, because that person have the same goal, right? They want to know how to summon a demon. They want to create a magical hero that can do certain things. So the intention is identical. Just those want to do it in real life, and this one is want to do it for the video game. But the question is the same, like, how I'm going to do that. And I would say, do you think it's possible, like, those people actually tapping into the same information somewhere in a collective unconsciousness?
They're not even, yes, but they're not even doing that necessarily. If you look at people like J.K. Rowling, who supposedly doesn't even believe in magic, said it openly on Oprah, like we've talked about.
Wrote 7 books of magic, don't believe in one.
Yeah, her whole series is based on it, and it has real magic in the books, but she doesn't believe in it. And again, I think it's just because she's a popular author. Maybe she doesn't, but I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like it would stand to believe that, I mean, it's the most banned book. So, you know, I think it's definitely more of a public image move. But as far as, you know, games and stuff, there's games like, you know, and I wanted to talk about this for a while too, was when I was just getting started with my development, I was way into RPGs. RPGs were like kind of the gateway for me into all this stuff, as nerdy as that sounds. And, you know, I don't really mind because I'm here doing it. It's great. I'm glad if I, you know, have to be called a, you know, some less desirable title for that, it doesn't really, you know, kind of just water off the back. But you know, the thing with it is, in games and fantasy and things like that, it seems like everything happens instantly. It's very Western mindset. It's very, I want it now. Give it to me now. It's like demon now. Demon conjure now. Now. And like, and it just like poof appears. And so I understand where people are coming from with, oh, it's all just fantasy. But if you look at fantasy, people talk about the Necronomicon. And like one of the guys, one of the chaos magic guys that we're friends, well, I'm friends with, what's his name? Well, I don't know. I didn't really say I was going to mention him here, so I'll respect that. I'll say one of my anonymous friends. But he's a really cool guy, and kind of like provides really legitimate arguments to the people with the really traditional mindsets who have fallen in love with romanticizing, as you know, you've spoke about it. And he's talking about how, like, look at the Necronomicon, it's fake as shit, and it works. It still works. And it's fake as hell. And it's like, that's the thing, like, you know, from a psychological perspective, definitely you could see that you could use anything potentially and make it work. From the spirit mindset, that things are spirits, that everything's alive, which everything is alive, everything is made of energy, but that there's spirits that are real and it's not just our minds. You know, I can see how people might disagree with that, but it doesn't necessarily hold true because all their gods are ultimately created. They just are. People created them, you know, thousands of years ago or whenever. And they have astral density from all the worshiping and energy that people have put into it, just like all the cartoons and video games that we have now. And so that's the case that I'm making for it, is that we've moved away from traditional forms of worship and into entertainment. And if you see the way that people use traditional, magical, whatever kinds of concepts, you see it, like, I talk to people about that with different cartoons nowadays. They'll use different magicians' names. They'll use different symbols that those magicians used in the anime. They'll use different spirits, like Pokemon. I saw one the other day in Facebook where it was like this person as a kitsune, which is a Japanese fox spirit. You know, that's really popular in Japan. I love the kitsune. I think it's a really cool spirit. It's technically like a vampire. Yeah, you know, and so all that stuff, it relates to these traditional ideas from so long ago. It all relates to that. It's just it's modernizing it. That's why I was really disappointed with that book, Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig. It's not modern. It's just, it's Golden Dawn. It's just there with an added chaos magic chapter for the new version of it. I mean, God rest his soul. You know, I respect him for his contributions, but it's not modern. You know, it's just not.
Moderately modern magic.
What?
Moderately modern magic.
So, you know,
kind of a modern magic, but not completely.
It's not even moderately modern magic. It's like
kind of a modern magic. But that's not such a catchy title, is it?
You know, I've talked to you about that too, how I feel like a lot of these guys lack creativity. Just they so lack creativity. They dig into these old books and they go, they said this, you know, 1,000 years ago or hundreds of years ago, before the 1800s. You know, they were saying this. It's important that's before the 1800s, because after the 1800s, you know, it has to be before that period for it to be not questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, man. Like,
is it leather bound? Is it leather bound? Is the book leather bound? It has a come on, you can. Is it paperback? Oh my god, that's not legitimate magic. It's just, oh, just forget about that. It's paperback, and it's after 1800. It's just like, forget about it. That's not legit. It's not prestigious enough. Forget about it. Is it? Oh, it's written in English. Oh no, just go, just go away, go home.
Yeah, it can't ever be written in English. It has to be at least translated once. You know, if it hasn't been at least translated from, you know, some root language, then
there's actually a point system, and that's it for extra translation or extra points. So certain languages has more points. So if it's old Coptic, you have 15 points. If it's Greek, okay, you got like 5 extra points. If it's Latin, okay, 5 maybe. If it's ancient Egyptian, you got 25, but still ancient Coptic is a bit better. So there's like a point system that's kind of adding up. So if you have old magic, if you have leather bound, and if it's old Coptic, translate it to Greek. From Greek, translate it to Egyptian and possibly to Latin, then you are getting loads of points. And therefore it's a completely valid system.
And you know, and that's the thing too, is like, if you look at the people who are making these arguments about using comic book characters, stuff like that. If you look at, you know, some of them are cool people, and I'm not harping on all of them at all. You know, some of them are cool, like, you know, promotion to him, you know, Jason Miller, like, he's cool. Like, he's not really against chaos magic, but he kind of has his own opinion, you know, about what he thinks is, you know, that's cool. I think that's great, and he's a good magician. But you know, and there's tons of good magicians out there, but you know, then there's the people that are just so stuck in, you know, it has to be this way because this person said it, and that really undermines themselves. It cuts them off by saying, you know, like, I can't make a point academically unless I have sources. And it's like, what about all the work that you've done? What about you? Put yourself in that person's position and think, you know, that person, you know, they may have had sources, but some people, they just were like, just like off the cuff, like, you know, okay, like, this is how things are. And people are like, oh my God, you know, and that person might not have had sources, you know, or if they did, you know, those sources, you know, they took from people. So it just doesn't really matter. It's like, you know, making it more modern, making it more up to date now, or just being traditional, you know, it's really a personal thing. But I don't like how people are just, you know, so arrogant about, like, oh, this has no, you know, it's not magic at all. And it's like, if you look at the scientific community, they have the same opinion about people who are way into magic and say that's not magic, because their traditional ideas of magic are, you know, you can make shit disappear, you can instantly throw fire, like, whatever. Science's idea of magic is fantasy, and magical practitioners' ideas of magic are opposed to fantasy. At least, like, a lot of the ones I've seen out there. And it just has to meet in the middle for it to work nowadays, you know. That's just how I see it.
It seems like basically we just created. It's like, you know, have a love triangle. This is more like hate triangle. And you got like a science, video games and traditional magicians. Like everybody hates everybody, and they're all doing the same thing without knowing it. Actually, I wanted to talk about something, and again, that's one of the things I also got from you. And you actually showed me that how actually you can incorporate some of the things from the video games, like magical gates and stuff, to my own practice. And that's one of the reasons why I realized, like, okay, there is actually no difference between what they're telling me in those books to visualize middle pillars and stuff like
Right.
that, and
Right.
the inspiration I can go from video games. So actually, that was actually super interesting how you actually like can actually what the magicians are doing in the video games. But I've noticed not all the video games or animes are somehow can be used for that. Not everything obviously can be used for that,
Right. Very good point.
but some of it definitely can. So I don't know if
Very,
you want to
very
talk
point.
about the gate a little bit more, just like give people some ideas how they can use video game ideas for their own practice.
You talking about like the Gate of Destiny thing, or that's
Mm-hmm.
talking about? Yeah, that's actually from Digimon, and which is came around the same time as Pokemon.
And the
Or
second you said that, like all the traditional magicians just fainted.
um, I've told some people about that technique. I've told quite a few people about that technique because I was using it for a while, and I still do sometimes. I'm so caught up in experimenting and constantly coming up with new stuff that I'm just constantly working on new stuff, and so I don't always get to do the older things that I've come up with working into my system or whatever. But with that technique, I mean, it was a cartoon show. So, but then, cartoon shows, they make them into video games. So, I'm sure it was probably a move in a game or something. And I definitely would like to elaborate more on that too, about moves in video games and stuff, and programming characters, all that kind of stuff. But, in the show Digimon, that was also a Japanese cartoon show, very based on spirits. You had, again, a kitsune type Digimon, just like in Pokemon, you had a nine-tailed fox, kitsune. You had all sorts of mythical creatures in that show. I mean, it's filled with it. And, you had a Thor's hammer type Digimon character, a Phoenix Digimon, like all sorts of characters that were based off of mythology, a fairy one, like, and the more that you kind of research it and see the later ones that came later, like once it kind of started to drop off and get less popular, it seems like the more mystical it got and the more magical the concepts got, which it was pretty cool. Like some of the designs are actually really cool for that show. In a lot of ways, it was actually way spiritual. I remember my best friend at the time was like, that show is spiritual. And I was like, what does that mean? It was like before I even knew what spiritual was, so all this stuff absolutely plant the seed as a kid. And you come back to it later and go, wow, what was I into? And in my opinion, I got way better of a magical education as a kid in the 90s, being into cartoons and stuff and playing video games, than I would have if I was just some traditional path, going about things the same way they always had for thousands of years. Not to say there's no validity in that, but it's just like, I can combine the two now. I can, the 1,000-year-old path is always there, but all the creativity and stuff that I did as a child, like, that's so huge to develop, But the point that you were making though about some games can be used more than others, or some things like that. It all comes down to imagination, in my opinion, and training. If you train visualization exercises, you get better at visualizing, and your visualizations become denser and more, animated. But at the same time, like I said earlier, I think that there's little shortcuts, and you can visualize things that already have a high
Density.
resolution, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I love that comparison.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, like again, like I mean, like when I was a kid, like Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario, Pokemon, all those things were big. I see them quite vividly. If I was just to think about them, I see them instantly. And cartoons in general are very vivid and visual. I often find that I have that it's a lot easier for me to visualize a cartoon than it is a real object. Um, you
Oh,
know,
interesting.
yeah. And so, but it depends, if I have like a really high association with something,
Mm.
maybe I might quickly be able to tap into that. I really have no problem visualizing anything, but I find that vividly and the sharpness and the brightness and the colors and all that stuff, cartoons um, every day of the week, those are going to be magnified because they're just exaggerations. They're so exaggerated, but they become real by
Mm.
all the energy and everything that people are putting into them. Just like traditional gods and things like that, like we were talking about, become real.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so I don't know. With the Gate of Destiny technique, though, I go off in all these different, trying to answer different things that you brought up. The Gate of Destiny thing, that was a technique that I developed through watching that show. Not as a kid, but later, coming back to it later and going, holy shit, like look at all this magical material that they have in these shows that I can use. It's great. And, I'm not going to necessarily claim ownership of these ideas that other people came up with, but they're really great. And actually, they can't really claim ownership of them either because it's all based off of other stuff too that,
Mm.
they took from. Um, and so basically the concept there was that like one of the Digimon, it was this angel, and he had this sword called Excalibur. So okay, not very original. It's based,
Metatron.
yeah. And I'll get to that too. There's actually a video game that was released a few years ago. I beat it, I bought it, and I had to get it. And it was actually based on Metatron. And so I'll get to that. It was a sweet game, but yeah, it was cool. But in this show, this guy is like called Magna Angemon, and all of the dudes in the show, their names ended with Mon for some odd reason. I don't know why, but because
Mine
Pokemon
means
doesn't do that.
mine means something in the Japanese.
Monster.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Like Pokemon means pocket monster. So
Okay, so it's not in the mythical Japanese language, so you're getting some points down for that.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, even if they're mythical creatures or whatever, yeah, it's deducted so far past the point of acceptable that it's just
Well, if it would be Pocetus monstrous in Latin or something like that, then we can talk about it, but not like this.
so basically like the guy, he creates a gate with his sword, and his sword, it's like kind of like a lightsaber kind of. I mean, we're introducing so many modern and past concepts anyway in cartoons. We're blending so much history and people's present creative ideas. But he creates a gate, and once he creates the gate, he's basically making a circle in the air with his blade, and then it basically turns into a gate and opens up, and it's like has like all these like different symbols on it and stuff. A lot of times in shows and cartoons they'll use runes around gates.
Oh
um,
yeah, true.
and so like it'll open up, and basically what it was used was to banish, essentially. I mean, it opened up and then it sucked in all like the demons. It sucked in all the demons that were there in the episode, and then they like, you know whatever, launched the bad guy into the gate too, and then the gate closed and disintegrated. And that was cool too, because there was like this whole thing with like rainbows and stuff, and it's cool. You know, it sounds kind of silly, but if you look at a lot of the books that are being written nowadays, where people want to say, oh, it's all fluff, you know, you got a lot of visualization exercises where people do things with rainbows. They incorporate, you know, rainbow healing light and things like that. And you know, really my big gripe is people just being too traditional, people being way too stuck in that, and not accepting like the potential for all these different things that we've discovered since you know, the last century or whatever. You know, even the mid last century were just like all these manuals coming out, you know, where people are doing stuff like that. It's considered new age, and so it gets written off. It's like, okay, but it still works. So you're lost. Like if you want to just, you know, write it off and I'm just going to be the guy that does this, and I'm going to become, you know, the expert in this. That's fine. But, you know, you're not really accomplishing anything or moving things forward. You're just going deeper into that subject, and, you know, maybe you might discover something, but I mean, it was William Mistley who said that all these traditions haven't really accomplished anything because they haven't stopped war on Earth. You know, so what have they actually really accomplished in the long run? It's like, yeah, Buddhism, you know, it's peaceful, all these different things, but they got slaughtered by invaders and people, and they couldn't do anything about it. So, you know, like, I'm not too into the traditional mindset. I'm into the present mindset and taking what was really valuable from those traditions. And a lot of people too are like, you know, oh, you should just stick to one tradition, or you should just stick to the tradition that you're coming from, or that your family is, you know, or whatever. And I think that's silly too, because it's just like, these are all just concepts and ideas. And if I like a concept or an idea from something else, then I'll use it, you know, and I'll adapt it to what I like, and go with it. And I think that it's great, you know. It doesn't matter what tradition it's in. If I think a kitsune fox is cool, then, you know, then that's something to look into. If I think that some Egyptian thing is worth my time, then I'll check that out, you know. But like, and they do that too. So I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy too there, you know. But yeah, overall, it's like just all the stuff that I learned from it, the way that I can apply it to real life. You look at how creative all this stuff is, and you look at where we're at now, and stuff that was written in books hundreds or thousands of years ago isn't necessarily that useful anymore. It can be in certain situations, but times have changed so much that, you know, we really do need to move forward and, you know, apply different strategies and techniques, in my opinion. We need to advance all this stuff. Otherwise, you know, it is going to get lost. You know, we need to look at what is most powerful now, or what's considered more useful in terms of health and exercise. I was talking to my friend the other day, yesterday, about that, about, you know, different exercises and health and ways to, you know, to stay at your best. And that certainly has to be applied to it too, like not being a slouch on the couch all day, just like doing all this stuff, you know, but combining being physical and active. And so yeah, you know, I don't know, I make a big point and argument against people with the traditional mindset, but I think oftentimes, like, yeah, they might be good with arts and crafts and stuff like that, but I almost feel like they're afraid to try new things, or to move outside of the box that they've put themselves in. Or if they've written a book, you know, God forbid that they actually challenge the tradition that they're so bought and sold on. I don't know.
I'm not just like, there is definitely a willingness to accept certain things that are going slightly against the crowd, but it has to be going against the crowd, but very still in boxed way. So you are kind of in the box, but you are pretending like you're against the box and you are playing it to be a rebel. But that's just like a side note. But actually, what games, let's say, what you think is the best games to try out for magic inspirations? Which would be your favorite ones?
That's a great question. You know, I would
I'm
say
good with great questions.
uh, you know, I would say like yeah, I, I would say yeah, I've been very good about the thing that we previously discussed that we wouldn't be talking about. But you know, I would say in general the best games to like use for magical training. Um, for one, I would say whatever you're drawn to. For starters, like that's advice that you get from people like we were talking about, going to a crystal shop and whatever crystal you feel drawn to go and pick it up and feel its energy and whatever. You know, I've gone out of my way to talk to different practitioners who I felt drawn to talk to. Like, wow, this guy has something really cool going on. I'd like to learn more about their approach or the way they see things. Come to find out, you know, at least with one person like that, way outside of what is considered, you know, kosher or, you know, just in general, it's just like, just way outside of that box or boxes, really putting himself kind of in his own box. And I think that's the way to do things. And I found too, I was thinking before the show about also saying, you know, I found too that some of the best people, some of the best mages out there that I've found are people who do fully embrace concepts like role playing and stuff like that. And it's like, why not, you know? You know, I mean, if you think about like, what's the point of magical training and stuff like that if you're not actually using it or putting it to some use of some kind? And to that extent, your life kind of becomes a quest of its own, just like a game or just like, you know, any other kind of fantasy thing. It's just not this quick, instant Western Hollywood version of it, but it's still there. It's just you know, and again, the more that I go through it, the more that I see that it's just all the imaginary concepts that people want to say it's not real. It seems more actually, yeah, no, that's actually kind of like right on the money. It's just has that Hollywood angle to it, but you know, other than that, there's still a lot of truth there, and it can be used in anyone's system. You know, you can say that's a pretty cool technique. I'd like to try that. You know, I think that's pretty cool. I think I might try that too. You know, and you can kind of just pick and choose. You know, but as far as video, I know again I'm going off into other stuff. If I was to pick like 5 games that I felt were really good at training, I can only speak from my own personal perspective. I would say Banjo-Kazooie. I mentioned it earlier, but Banjo-Kazooie is a really, really good game because the worlds are pretty big, like the levels are pretty big. They're really creative. They're bright or they're dark and mysterious, but there's so many creative elements and so much cool stuff going on. And that's the game with the shaman too I was talking about. That's a really great game to play, and just it's fun and lighthearted. It doesn't it kind of laughs at itself. You kind of have to laugh playing it. It's silly and fun. And so that's a really great game. It has a special place, you know, in my heart, I think, that game. Even though I never beat it, I got close to it, but I was a kid, and I'm better, even though I don't play games that much anymore, I'm a lot better now when I do pick up games, because I just understand life more, and so it's just games are actually a lot easier for me now. But that's a great one. Secret of Mana, you know, people saw me post a picture on my other account on that game. That's like a, you know, it's kind of dated, but it's still timeless. It's such a great RPG, and I'd say RPGs in general are really great for exploring the concepts of magic, because, you know, if they have a good system in the game, you know, because games have different systems they use. It's not all the same. Like some of them are kind of streamlined like that, and it's like, okay, health bar, magic bar, moves list, items, you know, and whatever other options they want to throw in there. There's a lot of games like that. But then there's ones that come around and they might be the same like that, like Pokemon or whatever, but it's so unique and creative that people fall in love with it and they play the shit out of it and never get sick of it. And it's still around 20 years down the line. And so it really is about being creative. That's how things stay relevant. It's about creativity. Mega Man, Sonic, Mortal Kombat, like all these games that have been from like back in the day that are still like popular now, and they're trying to like do reboots of like cartoon shows that are from like 20 years ago, like or not even like 10 years ago or whatever, like Powerpuff Girls, like we're talking about. You know, they're doing like a Powerpuff Girl reboot. They might have already done it. Yeah. You know, just different things like that, like because the cartoons suck so much now that they're just taking the old stuff and they're saying this worked, so why not just use it again? Why not just recycle this? Kids will love it. And okay, and you know, it's kind of silly because it shows the times we're living in, and you know, the weight or the density of people's creativity, or something. It shows that there's something inherently not right about the level of creativity going on nowadays. I don't know if it's because we live in the information era or what it is, but there's something that's not captivating people about it enough. There's something that's not drawing people into it enough. Or maybe it's just that social media is just ruining everything. I don't know. But it's just, you know, it's all free and it's just so instant. It's the Western thing again of just like now. But you know, you don't have to pay for it. That's even better. But you know, but so I would recommend games like, you know, that you feel are fun to play, like if you have any experience. But certain games I don't think are good for magical training. Like I went on YouTube today and, you know, of course, like I'm not going to pay the 99 cents that they want me to pay for no ads. So I still see them and I'm like, yeah, everybody's putting their videos up on YouTube and now you're going to capitalize on it. All right. But basically I saw like a Street Fighter ad or something and I'm like when I was a kid, like, you know, I probably used to pretend I was like a Mortal Kombat character or whatever. You know, I used to pretend that I was the character in the games that I played. That's common for kids to do. You know, and you know, as far as that game goes, I would say fighting games are kind of limited. Like you could take stuff from those games. Like some of the characters have like some cool moves and stuff, and you know, you could be like, you know, that guy that was really creative, like Dalsim in Street Fighter. He's a cool character. He's the master of yoga, but his stuff isn't that practical. It's like he's got like these arms that are like super stretchy that can like hit the guy from the other side of the screen, like legs too. But he's like this master of yoga dude, and he's got like skulls like around his neck and like he's pretty sweet. But there's not really a lot to work with necessarily with fighting game characters. It's just so focused on fighting. While with an RPG, you've got all these awesome spells and stuff that you can hook your characters up with if they're a mage or whatever. Sometimes they don't have to be, and they can just use spells. But really depends on the system of the game. Some people have different preferences of the kinds of games that they like playing. You know, there's different types of games. They're you know, separated in different categories and genres, and so, you know,
Well, obviously, if you're taking stuff from Grand Theft Auto, you're going to end up in jail for a long, long time.
well,
It's the
you know, to that end, I would say that there's a certain level of street smarts or life lessons or something, you know, like you could watch that, but you could get that from like any kind of like criminal investigation type show or something, you know, like, but I'm just looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, how can I use magic in modern times, in modern days? It's not Agrippa era anymore. It's not, you know, sit around all day and life is simple anymore. It's like, it's just not like that anymore. Life is fast and busy and lots of stuff is going on. And you know, I don't want to say that none of those traditions are of value, because they absolutely are, but things just, they need to move ahead in some way, otherwise they're just going to die out. You know, if it doesn't update in some way, then people are, even Facebook does that. You see with Facebook, they're like constantly berating you with these new things of like, you know, now you can do this, look at this, and they'll change the way that the emoticons look and whatever, and it's just like, this makes me want to use it less every time you do this, but I get it. You want me to stay. All right.
I do.
But
there was something I actually wanted to mention as you've been talking about the characters. I realized the anime Sailor Moon, and that's planetary magic, just in way sexier way. Because like all of the characters in a Sailor Moon basically are connected to planets. So you got Venus, you got Neptune, you know, the Sailor Moon, who's obviously a moon. So, and they have all like superpowers. I'm such a manga girl. Yeah, I'm like straight out of anime or hentai. And basically, what I wanted to mention one game, and that's a game that again have a very special place in my heart, and it's very magically connected. I don't think that many people will know it, but it was actually a like adventure game called Longest Journey. And basically the main plot of The Longest Journey was that the girl named April was living in a world, was a waitress and just normal job. And then she found out that there is a parallel world that's filled of magic. And at some point in the past, the science and magic was living together in a great harmony. And at some point, when the science rejected the magic, the world split into two worlds. The ones we are all living in, that's the world of a science called the Stark, and then a parallel world that's called the Arcadia, where all the magic went. And she started to, and she actually learned how to travel between those two worlds. And at that point, I was like 40-minute display. Like now, the graphic of the game looks horrendous because it's just old game. But I love that game so much. Still, definitely. When I was playing that game, I was like, oh my God, it would be so cool to be able to travel between the world of science and the world of magic. And thank God I got into the point where I'm actually doing that, like physically, with the things I'm doing, and the two worlds kind of blend together. And she is basically like traveling between those two worlds, and she's actually realizing, you know, the presence of a magic, and then the two worlds actually start to like melt and blend and kind of like going together, and they want to explode, and she's trying to save it. But this whole concept of magic, as you said, RPGs, loads of it. Obviously, my favorite all-time fave, Tomb Raider. It's basically like based on like living creatures of a god, so in most cases are trying to kill you.
Now, was Tomb Raider technically considered an RPG, or was it more of like an adventure game? Do you know?
I have no freaking clue, but I think
Yeah, the difference between like with an RPG, RPGs tend to be like you can level up your characters. They get like certain stats, and you can decide like what you want to raise in their stats and things like that. So I would imagine that it's like mostly it's leaning more towards an adventure game, but you know, Tomb Raider was fun. I played that a few times. It was a fun game. I didn't have the system it was on, so I never really, got to play it as much as it was. It was hyped up though. It was like a big deal. The game that you just talked about, though, I looked it up. That's a really cool looking game. I've seen it before. I've never played it, but it's a very cool looking game, and definitely be worth a playthrough. But you know, especially if that's something you're into, it'd be cool just to like look into that. But and that's the thing too, is it's like you spend so much time on a video game. I mean, it takes at least 60 hours usually, 30 to 60, it depends on the game, but it takes, you're putting in hours of time into a game. So if somebody really liked a game, play the game and you learn something about that person. Games are such a big part of today. And because there's so much fantasy concepts and there's so much creativity, I see it as elements of magical training, because you're moving the character around. You are in control. You aren't in complete control because you can't be like, oh, I want the character to do this, but the game won't let me. You have to do what the game lets, within the reason of what they've programmed. But you're still in control of that character. And so, to that end, you're using your will, you're enacting your will into the game. And that's why I like games. It's like you're doing something. And playing as a character, who has certain abilities or whatever, it's fun. When I was just getting started, here's some other games that I'll recommend, because I only recommended like 2 or 3, but some other games I'd recommend, all RPGs. You mentioned with that game Arcadia, and there's this game called Skies of Arcadia. It's one of my favorite games. It was released on Dreamcast, Sega Dreamcast. Then it was put onto GameCube after Dreamcast went bankrupt, or Sega went bankrupt or whatever, because they couldn't afford to produce all those systems, because the system cost more to make than what they were selling it for. So that game was awesome, and they actually put a bunch of Dreamcast games onto GameCube. And Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is another one. It was from Dreamcast. They put onto GameCube. Phantasy Star Online 1 and 2. That game was just amazing. I played that game so much.
I never played Final Fantasy games, but I guess that's one of the things that can be used for Magic too, right? But I never played it. But
I haven't really either, believe it or not. And that's funny, because Final Fantasy is considered to be like one of the quintessential video games out there, and I really haven't played any of them, to be honest. Like, I actually had a friend once who told me, I was like, I've wanted to play Final Fantasy VII forever, because it was like just one of the more like iconic games. Like, the dude Cloud, you may even know who he is. The guy, he's got blonde hair and he's got this huge sword. He's got this really huge sword, and like, he's just this iconic character. And they even took in Kingdom Hearts, they blended Final Fantasy in with Disney. It's like combining these two things together, these huge franchises together. That's magic, bringing these things together. It's going to draw people in. They're going to go, I recognize these characters, these concepts, these symbols, and they're going to go to it. And it's smart. And I mean, if you look at like things like NLP or stuff like that, it's it's just a good move, and you're using these kinds of concepts, and not necessarily manipulation, but kind of like persuasion, things like that, to get people into it. And so, yeah, it's interesting how that market works. You know, I personally like I'm way out of it now because I just don't have time to play video games anymore, but I probably adapt and use the concepts more than ever. I always find that when I'm practicing something, you know, you're doing it. You're in the mode of doing the practice. But when you stop doing the practice, it's suddenly like it all kind of comes to you, like the value of it, you know, why you were doing it, the effects it's had on you, how it's affecting the world around you, and all that stuff. And so by not playing video games, I'm seeing how it affected me. And I think it was pretty positive. So yeah, Skies of Arcadia. Also, most people played this game, especially like who are into Magic. Skyrim, that was an insanely popular game, and that was such a cool time in my life too. You were talking about Two Worlds with The Longest Journey. There's actually this RPG called Two Worlds that I loved playing, and it's a terrible game, but I loved playing it. It's just broken. The game is completely broken. The characters, they're like swinging their swords in this way that like their arms aren't supposed to move. It's just so broken, but it's great and it's so fun, and like you do all this stuff and it's great. And I didn't even get that far into it, but you know, that was the kind of stuff that got me on the path. Was, you know, the first dude that I met, he's like, yeah, I can make you a necromancer. It's like, what the hell is that? It's like, that sounds fucking sweet.
That
you
was
know,
quick.
and like, it's like the first dude I met, he's like in this graveyard, and it's like, cool. And I'm like, I like the sound of that title. I'm like, that's what's up. You know, and I'm like, my character's a necromancer. I'm like, that's pretty sweet. And then like, you know, after that, like, or maybe before that, I was playing Dragon Age. Got really into that game. Everybody around me was into that game at that time. It was huge. It was like game of the year type, probably, like won so many awards. You know, that was a long time ago now. It was like 5 or 6 years ago, but you know, I was like way into that game, and I would just sit there and not even move like all day. Like my friends would come back to my apartment and be like, you literally haven't moved. Like, you know, it's like the day had gone by and I was just still in the same space that I hadn't moved really. Maybe a little bit on the couch, like, you know, like over a little bit, but not really. And
Who
you know,
brought you
I
food?
played
How
that.
did you eat?
What?
Who brought you the food? How did you eat?
Yeah, all those pre-cooked dinners. But you know, I had people come in and just be like, "Wow, dude, you're binging hard on this game," and that's what people do with games. That's why we need to talk to at this in this show about balancing it. You know, one of the things that you noticed about Second Life was like, you know, that those people don't have lives. I'm into First Life. Like that's what you were saying. Like I'm about First Life, and it's like, yeah, of course. You know, my little brother and I went into I tell people this story it's just so ridiculous, but my brother and I, we went into GameStop, which is a video game store. You know, and they'll probably stop doing video game stores eventually. I mean, Nintendo's talking about, with its new system, it's talking about how it's going to make physical games still, but I think eventually it's all just going to have to go digital because they're going to save so much money by putting everything on a completely digital format. If they don't have to make games, they're losing money, and they know it. But they want to keep the stores in business because that makes them money too. So it's kind of this, you know, it's like the iPhone and the Apple stores where they have like 20 or 30 employees in each store. It's like literally like that's what the stores are like. But they charge so much for their phones, they can afford it. You know, it's not a big, you sell a phone, it's like, okay, everybody just got paid. But so, you know, with what happened with this story was I went into GameStop with my little brother, and we were just like looking, we were just browsing at games, and they started talking about World of Warcraft, and we weren't even like paying attention to it really. I mean, like we could hear the conversation going on between these two, like the store clerk and another guy, but you know, we were kind of just still like, all right, meandering around the store, looking at games and stuff. This little kid goes up, throws his arms up and just goes, I play World of Warcraft 12 hours a day. And I was just like,
Oh my God.
yeah,
That's strong.
I was
12
like,
hours a day. That's okay. We need to talk about visiting a therapist. We really do.
so, you know, this is the thing, is that we have so many concepts with magic and fantasy, and now in the age that we live in, we're in the entertainment era, kind of, more or less. I mean, yeah, I would say more or less. Definitely the information, entertainment, social media era for sure. Electronics, all that. So it has to be balanced. It has to be balanced out with, you know, not feeding your life away and energy away into these things that other people have created, and instead learn from that stuff, take from that stuff, and put it into your own creations, your own thing. Not enough people are doing that. People that they talk about who wake up, go to work, and whatever, don't really accomplish much. They're distracted by TV. They're distracted by entertainment. That's why I don't play video games right now. You know, I played the other day with my little brother before he left on vacation. But you know, it's like, that's why I don't really play video games, because I just don't have the time for it, and a lot of people don't. Really, nobody has 12 hours a day to play games. I mean, that's just, yeah, that's why I had to say it. That's why I said it, because it's just like such an extreme example of somebody who is overtraining in magic. It's somebody who is like, I'm gonna practice magic 12. I practice magic 12 hours a day. It might as well be the same thing. I've developed all these sweet siddhis, guys. Look at all the siddhis I've collected. You know, like I can do so much. I have so many, you know, and it's just like, so you have to have that balance there. And you see it with video games just as much as you see with magic or anything else. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, it's so easy to get sucked into those worlds and just to like, just want to sit there and play it all day. And it's, in the same respect, it's just as easy to do that with magical practices. The thing about magical practices that I'd say are a lot different is it's very physical. You're using your mind. You're not going to be able, generally most people aren't going to be able to practice that 12 hours a day. It's just not humanly possible for most
I know
people.
like one person who I know who'll be able to do that, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, but then it's like, why would you want to? You know, because in that sense, where are your gifts going to? You know, how are you using what you've learned practically? Because if you spend 12 hours a day doing that, okay, well then you go to sleep and you just do it again the next day, and it's like, that's not going to anything. And so it's the same thing with if you're just playing video games, but you're not actually applying what you've learned from it, or you're not using other people's, because I look at people who create entertainment, games, art, things like that. I look at them as like, depending on who it is, like creative juggernauts. They're able to use their minds on an athletic level. You know, they're creating these worlds, they're creating these characters, they're creating so much stuff, and so they're like mental athletes. And in a lot of ways, that's what magic does with people too. It makes you, you know, some people use it as a way of being a spiritual athlete. I think that it's just good to find balance in that, you know. I don't think that this, you know, having too much severity in any which way is a good thing. But I think that there's definitely so much to be borrowed. I think that it's like, it would be such a waste to not look at all the concepts and the ideas that people are using in entertainment, games, things like that. It would be a waste to not learn from that. And it would be a waste to not say, how could I apply that to my system or to my life? I think it would be a waste to just throw it all out because it's not from a tradition. That's just absolutely ridiculous to me. And so that's why I think it's important that people look more into the future and where we are now. And again, like, they didn't have video games in Agrippa's day. They didn't have all the stuff we have now. It's not saying that candles aren't great, because they are, or incense. It's just that you can adapt things to be the way that you want now. And, you know, we have more freedom in a lot of ways now than we did then. And it's pretty cool. And so, yeah.
So I think we are kind of slowly going to the end of the show. So I would like to say thank you so much for taking part. I'm also quite sure this is not the last time. This is not the last show. We are doing together, and obviously it's going to be also easier to kind of do once you are over here in London. So like, I mean, like literally over here. So if somebody who's listening would like to know more about you, obviously the more information about you, like your blog, which is great, and your Facebook groups and stuff like that, but people can find you. They are interested to get in touch with you, find out more about you and what you're doing.
Yeah, so currently, you know, I just posted a blog yesterday. So Mage Magic, Magic with a K.
Oh,
yeah, and that's temporary. I didn't even want to post it in that blog, because it's like, you know, it's like I just wanted to find, that's until I find a new name, until I go with a new name. But for now, it's you know, it's under that name.
Most hated K on this side of the planet.
I don't like it either. Magic with a C was taken, so I just went with that. But hey, you know, at least it differentiates stage magic from, you know, and then the argument too that that Agrippa used it with a K, but you know, whatever. So there's that. There's Mage Magic on Blogspot, and then as far as everything else goes, you know,
you have a Facebook groups.
I have Modern Grimoires. I took that group over. I don't even know who started that originally, but I took it over because it's just such an awesome group. It's such an awesome concept for a group, and I was like, wow, I really wish that I'd came up with this on my own, and like, I kind of want this to be my group. And then Facebook literally asked me one day, like, you know, you want this group? Hey guy. And it's just like, all right, it's mine now. And then I created a group for the Miracle of New Avatar Power, because out of all the modern grimoires, that seems to be the one that people seem to most take to, and it's certainly one that I've worked a lot with. So yeah, just in general, those are great groups. I'm really happy with the level of positivity, and like, you know, very rarely do I see anybody, you know, trying to start something. Usually they come from some other school or tradition, and they're like, you know, trying to start some kind of argument. But in general, everybody there is like really cool. So I like that. I think that's a very positive thing. And yeah, as far as everything else I'm doing, I'm working on my stuff, you know, honing into my ideas. What's that?
Writing a book.
I have been for years, but definitely a lot more lately. I've been really kind of like distilling my ideas down and putting way more on paper. You know, I think for a long time with the training that I did with Barden, I thought, you know, I have to just do things this certain way. And then I got to a point where I broke out of that because I had all these ideas, all this stuff I wanted to do and try. And I was just like, you know what, like I'm at a pretty good point here with this system where I can just kind of go off and do my own thing and not feel sorry about that at all. And just, you know, you get to a point, it's like you create your own system, you know, you do things your own way. And that's really where I'm at right now, is just all the stuff that I've learned and just taking it and putting it into one book, basically.
So yeah, that's basically what you can find Matthew. I would also highly recommend to actually have a look at his Facebook groups and his blog. They're absolutely awesome. As I mentioned, there is quite a big possibility that this is not the last show. Yeah, you can see us together for many good reasons. And so we're going to be definitely around, going to be talking about NAP on some of the later shows for sure. And if you are interested in seeing more of those shows, obviously you can find it on my YouTube channel called Spiritual Alchemy, or the website, which you can either see in the description just right there, or you can find it somewhere around this video or a radio, wherever you are listening. So thank you so much, obviously, Matthew, and everybody who was listening. And I will be looking forward to hear you all at some point very soon.